You walk into a room. You say something that no one else said, you think in a way no one else dared to, and you see the truth behind the masks everyone else wears. And suddenly you feel it. Not admiration, not curiosity, but rejection, cold distance. A subtle shift, the room turns against you. Why? Why does society seem to push away those who think deeply, question everything, and break through the illusions that most people spend their lives defending? Schopenhauer had an answer, and it's not comforting. It's a mirror.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Schopenhauer believed that the world is not ruled by reason, but by will, raw, blind will. People don't want truth. They want comfort. They don't seek understanding. They seek affirmation. So when someone truly intelligent enters the scene, someone who sees past the surface, someone who challenges the herd, someone who refuses to play along, they become dangerous. Not because they attack, but because their very presence reveals how shallow the game is. And most people would rather destroy the mirror than face what they see in it. This is not about IQ, not about academic degrees. We're talking about the kind of intelligence that penetrates illusion. The kind that sees both the beauty and the horror of existence without flinching. The kind that refuses to lie to others or to itself. And that kind of mind is rare, not because it's genetically superior, but because few are willing to carry the loneliness that comes with it. Schopenhauer knew that the intelligent person is often condemned to solitude, not because they choose it, but because the world chooses it for them. The masses, he said, are governed by imitation, by instinct, by emotion, not reason. So when the truly intelligent speak, they are not understood. Worse, they are often mocked, because their ideas threaten the fragile structures that give others a sense of meaning. Their very existence is an act of rebellion against mediocrity. Have you ever wondered why your deepest thoughts are met with silence, or worse, ridicule? Why your honesty makes others uncomfortable? Why your refusal to conform is seen not as courage, but as arrogance? It's not because you're wrong. It's because you're too right for a world built on self-deception. People don't hate intelligence, they hate what it reveals. And here's where it gets darker. Society doesn't just ignore the truly intelligent, it punishes them. Not always with violence, but with exile. You're invited less. You're listened to less. You're tolerated, but never embraced. Because you don't fit. And Schopenhauer would say, that's the price of seeing clearly. Clarity is not rewarded. It is feared. But why is this rejection so consistent across time and culture? Why do the truly intelligent often die in obscurity, only to be celebrated once they're gone and no longer a threat? Because when you're alive and you speak the uncomfortable truth, you disrupt the collective sleep. You question religion. You question politics. You question love, tradition, morality. And people cling to those things not because they're true, but because they're safe. So when you tear down those illusions, they don't see you as a liberator. They see you as a destroyer. And this is the great paradox. The more clearly you see, the more invisible you become. The more honestly you speak, the more others turn away. Not because you're wrong, but because you're saying what they already know deep down but are too afraid to admit. This is what Schopenhauer meant by the tragedy of genius. that the highest minds often suffer the lowest recognition, that society by its very structure is hostile to those who transcend it, because mass culture is built on repetition, not originality, on belonging, not awakening. And if you refuse to play along, you are shunned not for your ignorance, but for your insight. But here's the critical shift. This rejection is not a reflection of your failure. It is the cost of your freedom. You are not being pushed out because you're broken. You are being pushed out because you're beyond the boundaries of what people understand. And Schopenhauer would say, don't run from that. Embrace it. Because the solitude that comes from true intelligence is not a curse. It is a sanctuary. It is in solitude that the mind sharpens, that the soul deepens, that the ideas others fear become your playground. But to do that, you have to stop expecting validation. You have to stop needing applause. You have to become self-sufficient, not emotionally, but intellectually. You have to accept that truth does not come with a crowd. It often comes in silence, in darkness, in exile. And here's the most powerful transformation. When you stop needing the world to understand you, you start understanding yourself. You begin to write, to think, to create not for approval, but for clarity. You stop diluting your thoughts to make them palatable. You stop apologizing for seeing what others deny. You begin to live not as a performer, but as a philosopher. But this path is not easy. It demands something brutal honesty, radical, unrelenting honesty with yourself. You must ask, where have I betrayed my own mind to belong? Where have I silenced my truth to be accepted? Where have I dumbed myself down to avoid conflict? And are those sacrifices worth it? Because every time you hide your intelligence to fit in, you shrink. Not just your mind, but your soul. You start to believe that comfort is more important than truth, that peace is more valuable than clarity. And slowly you forget who you are. You become a mask, a watered-down version of yourself. And you die not physically, but spiritually. Schopenhauer would tell you, don't do that. The world may never understand you, but you must understand yourself. That is your task. That is your burden. And that is your freedom. You were not born to echo. You were born to question, to disrupt, to see beyond the veil. And yes, that will cost you, but it will also free you. So ask yourself, what am I willing to sacrifice to think freely? Can I endure the loneliness that comes with truth? Can I walk away from the crowd and into the wilderness of my own mind? Can I live without applause if it means living with integrity? This is not just philosophy. This is survival. Because if you are truly intelligent and you deny it long enough, you will suffer. Not because others hurt you, but because you betray your own nature. And no pain is worse than that. But if you accept it, if you embrace the solitude, if you build your own framework, if you stop begging the world to understand, you become unstoppable. You become not just intelligent, but wise. Not just smart, but awake. And that is the rarest thing in any age. You've probably already felt it, the slow disconnection, the widening gap between what you see and what others pretend not to. Maybe it started in childhood, when you asked a question no one had an answer for. Maybe it's now, when every conversation feels shallow, every social circle like a masquerade. This isn't arrogance. It's awareness. And Schopenhauer would say that the more you evolve intellectually and spiritually, the more you'll feel like a foreigner in your own culture. Not because you're broken, but because you've outgrown the illusions everyone else still depends on. Schopenhauer saw the world as a place driven not by reason, but by will, by blind, irrational striving. And those who see clearly are not celebrated, they are isolated. Why? Because they threaten the illusion that life is as simple, as joyful, as fair as most people want to believe it is. The intelligent person sees through the myths of happiness through consumption, of justice guaranteed by systems, of progress as a straight line. And when you say those truths out loud, you become a problem. You become someone who makes the unconscious conscious, and that is something society resists with all its might. The world doesn't want philosophers. It wants performers. It doesn't want thinkers. It wants believers. The masses don't want to be awakened. They want to be reassured. So when you bring the light of uncomfortable truth, it burns their eyes. And instead of turning inward, they blame you. They label you negative, cold, weird, arrogant. But these labels are just defense mechanisms, psychic armor, to protect their fragile worldview. And this is where many intelligent people make a tragic mistake. They begin to doubt themselves. They begin to lower their light. They pretend to be normal, to blend in, to be accepted. But inside, they're dying, because you can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unknow what you know. And every time you betray your intelligence for the comfort of others, you fracture your own soul. You don't just lose your voice, you lose your essence. So what do? Do we isolate completely? Do we give up on connection? Schopenhauer would say, not entirely. But you must be selective. You must seek solitude not as a punishment, but as a refuge. Because solitude is where the truly intelligent mind regenerates. It's where deep thought becomes possible. It's where your inner world becomes richer than the outer one. And once that inner world is developed, something strange happens. You stop needing the approval of the crowd. You stop needing small talk to feel seen. You stop craving attention because you found something far more nourishing, self-respect. The respect that comes from living in alignment with your truth, even when it isolates you, especially when it isolates you. But this isn't about becoming a hermit. It's about becoming sovereign, independent, self-contained. You can still love people. You can still engage. But you no longer depend on them for your sense of identity. You no longer edit your mind to be digestible. You say what's true and let the chips fall. Because your allegiance is no longer to social survival, it's to truth. And that's the quiet superpower of the truly intelligent. They don't chase validation. They create value. They don't seek attention. They seek understanding. They don't need to be liked. They need to be free. And that freedom begins the moment you stop expecting society to celebrate your difference and start honoring it yourself. But make no mistake, this path is hard. There's a deep loneliness that comes with intelligence. A longing for depth that most conversations never reach. A hunger for meaning that most environments can't satisfy. You'll often feel like you're speaking a different language. Like you're dreaming in color, while everyone else insists the world is black and white. And in those moments, you'll be tempted to retreat entirely or to numb yourself through distraction. Don't use that alienation as fuel. Let it sharpen your clarity. Let it deepen your questions. Let it push you to create, to write, to build, to explore. Because the truth is, the greatest minds in history, those who shifted the world, were all outsiders. They were ridiculed, exiled, ignored. Not because they were wrong, but because they were early, too early for a world still sleeping. So when you're rejected, remember, it's not a sign of your failure. It's confirmation that you're awake. And those who are awake will always seem strange to the ones still dreaming. But here's the twist: your intelligence isn't just a burden. It's also a gift, a light, a torch you carry not just for yourself, but for others who haven't yet found their voice. When you speak your truth, even if it's not understood, it creates a ripple. It plants seeds. It awakens something in those who are ready. And that's how culture shifts, not through mass consensus, but through individual courage. So don't wait to be understood. Don't wait to be invited. Don't wait for permission. Think, write, speak, share, build your own table, create your own audience, and know that even if the world shuns you now, your legacy will outlive their silence. Schopenhauer was not optimistic about humanity. He believed most people would never break free from their illusions. But he also believed that for the few who do, those rare, awake minds, the reward is not applause, but liberation. The ability to live truthfully, to see clearly, to be fully oneself, without compromise. And that's the question you must ask yourself now. Would you rather be accepted for a lie or rejected for the truth? Would you rather be surrounded by noise or alone with clarity? Would you trade your mind for comfort? Or would you suffer for your soul? This isn't an abstract idea. It's a daily choice. Every time you speak up, every time you stay silent, every time you choose what to read, what to watch, what to say, you are shaping your reality. You are either betraying your intelligence or honoring it. There is no middle ground, and every compromise takes a toll. But every act of truth, no matter how small, builds inner strength. Every time you think independently, you become harder to manipulate. Every time you say what you really believe, you reclaim your voice. And eventually, you become immune to the fear of exile, because you've built a home within yourself. That's the ultimate power of the truly intelligent. Not that they know more, but that they live more freely. They are not owned by trends, by gossip, by the need to fit in. They walk their own path, even when it's lonely. And in doing so, they light the way for others. You've walked far enough to see that the path of intelligence is not paved with praise, but carved from silence. It's not lined with friends cheering you on, but with echoes of your own unanswered questions. And yet, as Schopenhauer taught us, there is something sacred about this solitude, because it's not empty. It's full of depth. It's full of potential. And in that space, you begin to realize that what once felt like rejection was actually redirection to a life of clarity, authenticity, and inner power. Schopenhauer believed that most people fear the truth because it threatens the illusions they've built their identities around. Whether it's belief systems, social norms, or inherited values, these structures serve as psychological shelter from the vast unknown. When a truly intelligent individual enters the scene and sees through those structures, it's like turning on a light in a room filled with people who have lived comfortably in the dark. That light doesn't comfort, it blinds. And what do people do when they're blinded? They lash out. They close their eyes tighter. They silence the source. But here's what makes this even more complex. The intelligent individual often doesn't feel superior. In fact, they feel deep sorrow. The more you understand, the more you suffer. You see the games people play. You see how much of life is pretense. You see how often people settle for what is easy rather than what is true. And that knowledge doesn't bring peace, it brings weight. You carry that awareness like a responsibility. Not because you want to, but because you must. This is why Schopenhauer didn't glorify genius. He saw it as a burden, a kind of spiritual exile. The truly intelligent live in a different psychological climate. Their air is thinner, colder, but clearer. They breathe ideas most people never encounter. They dwell in questions most people avoid. And while that sharpens them, it also isolates them. Because explaining this reality to those who haven't felt it is like describing color to someone born blind. And yet this exile has a hidden gift. You begin to find others, not many, but a few. The scattered, quiet minds who also walk this path. You recognize them not by their appearance, not by their popularity, but by their silence, their eyes, their willingness to speak truth without needing to be loud. These are your kin, not by blood, but by mind. And when you find them, there's no need for small talk. You meet in the depths. You speak from the soul. And that kind of connection is rare but real. Still, most of your time will be spent alone. And that's not a tragedy. That's an invitation. Schopenhauer believed that solitude was not a weakness, but a strength. It's where the truly intelligent refine their mind. It's where you read, think, create, observe, heal. It's where you stop performing and start becoming. And the longer you spend in solitude, the more you realize you're not missing out, you're tuning in. But solitude is not isolation. It's not withdrawal from life, it's a deeper engagement with it. You begin to see patterns. You begin to see how people move, how they speak, how they lie to themselves. And instead of judging, you begin to understand. You begin to forgive. Because you realize that most people aren't malicious, they're afraid. They cling to illusions not because they're evil, but because they're fragile. And once you see that, you stop fighting them. You stop trying to wake them up. You simply live by example. And that's where the shift happens. You stop needing to be understood. You start needing to be real. You stop trying to convince and start trying to create. You build your own world, your own rhythm, your own rituals. You write the book, even if no one reads it. You speak the truth, even if no one hears it. You think deeply, even if it earns you no applause, because that's who you are, not an entertainer, not a follower, but a philosopher of your own life. Schopenhauer knew that the world would never fully embrace the intelligent. But he also knew that those individuals, when they stop seeking approval and start embracing purpose, can create something eternal, not because they have followers, but because they have vision. They have the courage to look into the abyss and not flinch. They have the strength to hold their own mind when the world turns against them. So what is your role in all this? Are you here to blend in, to be liked, to echo what's already been said? Or are you here to question, to challenge, to see what others ignore? That choice is yours. But know this, the more you choose truth, the more the world will resist you. And the more you persist, the more powerful you become. Not in the eyes of others, but in your own being. And that's the ultimate reward. Not fame, not recognition, but freedom. The freedom of a mind that cannot be bought, cannot be silenced, cannot be lost in the crowd. The freedom of walking through the world with eyes wide open, even when it hurts, even when it costs you everything. Schopenhauer would tell you to stop lamenting your difference, to stop apologizing for your depth, to stop expecting the world to understand what it was never meant to. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to understand yourself and to live in alignment with that understanding. So the next time you feel alone in your thoughts, remember that solitude is not emptiness. It's space. It's clarity. It's the sacred arena where the mind meets the eternal. And in that space, you become more than a person. You become a force, a witness to the truth, the speaker of the unspeakable, a guardian of the real in a world addicted to illusion. And maybe, just maybe, your courage to walk this path will light the way for another, not because you tried to save them, but because you refused to betray yourself. That is the legacy of the truly intelligent. Not to be seen, but to see. Not to be followed, but to illuminate.